Hello, World Wide Web. I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality with the best hair. And this might surprise you, but I kinda like horror movies. Shocking as it might sound, it's true! Never mind that this is the 120th episode of my review show in which I have spent a considerable amount of time focusing on the genre. But hey, maybe you didn't realize because in all this time I have strangely avoided the topic of Clive Barker, a prominent face in horror media. Known for such films as Candyman, or going a bit further back, Nightbreed, Barker is a horror writer turned director, possibly as a response to the way one of his stories was turned into the film Underworld, also known as Transmutations, in 1985. As Clive himself put it, he thinks they used maybe 7 of his lines. Of course, he could avoid the problem altogether if he took up the helm as writer and director of films based on his books, which he did in 1987 for the now classic film Hellraiser. Based on Clive Barker's novella, The Hellbound Heart, included in Dark Harvest's Night Visions Volume 3, Hellraiser is actually not a perfect representation of said story. It's mostly the same, but certain events and characters are changed in pretty sharp ways. For instance, Kirsty is not a friend of Rory who is secretly in love with him. She's his daughter, and his name's Larry. And fortunately, a lot of the sexualized themes are also toned down quite a bit for the movie. Honestly, just looking over the synopsis, Hellraiser comes off kind of like 50 Shades of Grey, except competently written, and with heavy horror elements. At the heart of the story, it's a peculiar take on a forbidden romance with extreme sadomasochistic overtones. So, sounds like fun! Let's take a look at Hellraiser and see a book turned into a movie with dozens of changes that I can't complain about because it's the author's fault. The movie wastes no time introducing us to the iconic puzzle box, being sold by the convenient shady oriental fella to Frank, played by Sean Chapman. As we can see, the puzzle is not all that complicated. The prize, however... it's still not quite as bad as opening the box of Sonic 06. Fortunately, when dealing with miscellaneous body parts strewn around your home, the new puzzle box makes cleanup a snap! Therefore, when an unspecified amount of time passes, and when Frank's brother Larry, played by Andrew Robinson, arrives with his wife Julia, portrayed by Claire Higgins, there is no trace of his corpse anywhere, just the rest of his belongings left to rot.
He's obviously made one of his famous getaways.
A getaway with food still on the table, in which he does not take any of his things. He just runs out naked into the night, completely unnoticed, yet famous. It's good enough that they opt to move in immediately, and despite her not being one of the new residents, Larry's daughter, Kirsty, shows up, played by Ashley Lawrence.
That your daughter?
Uh-huh.
Got her mother's looks.
Her mother's dead.
Awkward. Not quite as uncomfortable, though, as when Julia starts hallucinating one of those convenient hallucinations that happen to stand in for memories. It turns out that just before she was to wed Larry, Frank showed up, and what with him being rude, obnoxious, and, well, an asshole, it's no wonder she fell madly in love with him on the spot.
What about Larry?
Forget him.
Oh yes, treat me like dirt! Larry's always too busy telling me how much he loves me. Well, I guess on some level, yes, this scene does make sense. Unfortunately, when Larry cuts himself, he rudely interrupts Julia's sexual recollection to bleed all over the floor. Like, a lot.
Is it deep?
I don't know, I haven't looked. You know me and blood.
I'm sure you'll be fine. Horror movies are like Mortal Kombat. Everyone's got like 12 extra gallons in them. It also turns out that the gory cleaning solution keeps working well after the first application. Not that anyone notices, as they're too busy dealing with Larry's complaints. Funny thing though, dark magic plus blood multiplied by horror movie equals incredibly gory supernatural reconstruction scene. If this is what actually happens in Mario every time I get an extra life... eesh. Horrible implications aside, they have their housewarming party, or invite one guy over to eat. Either way, Julia is still longing for the forbidden passion of her beloved jackass, and leaves the party a tad early, but strange noises in an old house? Obviously, this requires investigation. Is it just me, or are movie rats always so cute and cuddly? Not to mention clean and well-fed. It makes a good contrast to your reanimated rotting ex-boyfriend, too. This obviously doesn't make for a good first impression. He does point out to her that they do in fact know each other, however.
Frank.
No. No!
Believe me, it's me.
I can understand how difficult this might be to accept. On top of how horrifying he fucking looks right now, he's actually being played by a completely different actor, Oliver Smith. Anyway, he wants her help, explaining that if just a little blood got him this far, a whole lot more should be able to fully restore him. Logically, since he got so damn big off of maybe a third of a cup of this stuff, a decent-sized steak should be enough to fully restore him. But that doesn't make for a good horror movie now, does it? What would is Julia staring at Christy in an off-putting manner long enough that she just leaves with her boyfriend, walking down to their favorite dark alley together where we get to see unreasonably important homeless man. Whom, sadly, does not give them their invitation to Hogwarts. However, he does give her one of those convenient foreshadowing nightmares, which she calls her dad about, and finding out that, no, he's not dead, never brings it up again. More importantly, we have to watch Julia do her part to help Frank's rebirth by seducing men at the local overly bright and clean bar. I understand she's going out looking for guys during the day, but where in the hell do you find a bar that bright and clean? I mean, this movie about extra-dimensional sadomasochists has gone completely off the deep end here. No matter, she brings him back to her place, what with him having a nice suit and tie combo. Obviously this man has no car, or anyone close to him to notice that he might just so happen to go missing today.
This isn't the bedroom.
No.
It's also grimy, rat-infested, smells pretty foul. Oh, and there's a ghoul in the corner.
We don't need a bed, do we?
It does make you wonder why you bothered bringing him up there, and he could have just, fucked on the floor downstairs, but Rather, he should be wondering that, as I know well enough said discrepancy is easily explained by her actual desire to murder the fuck out of him.
Don't look at me.
She's already seen you naked. And undead. How disturbing could watching you feed on the man she just killed possibly be? Don't know, but after a short rinse, she finds out just how old Frankie is doing after the snack.
See? It's making me whole again.
And the law of diminishing returns is in full effect, it seems. A whole damn fresh corpse, and that's the best he can get out of it? And he didn't even eat the whole damn thing, wasteful bastard! Frank's gory groping is interrupted, though, when Larry comes home. Not early, just home. Turns out Julia is really shit at scheduling her murders. Strangely enough, her having to hide the corpse from her husband is not depicted as zany antics, but instead uncomfortable tension.
You want a cookie, little girl?
Or at least it was trying to. She does manage to pull it off, and even has enough time to have another chat with Frank before returning to her husband. Here she learns that Frank wants to get out soon to avoid a certain problem.
The Cenobites. It's only a matter of time before they find I've slipped them.
Ah yes, the Cenobites, the ultimate beings of pleasure and pain. Now when it comes to keeping track of their pets, they're not exactly on the up and up. On that note, let's move over to the pet store where Christy has found employment, as she has a chance encounter yet again with Hagrid.
What are you doing?
Oh my god.
Now don't give me that look, it's good protein and fiber. I mean, give 20 or 30 years, I'm sure we'll see a McCricket added to the menu. Openly or otherwise. This scene is just here to establish creepy homeless guy is still in the movie. And past time, so it isn't quite so jarring that Julia brought yet another random guy home to feed Frank, improving his overall condition, yet he still doesn't exactly look like the kind of guy you'd bring home to Mom.
You promised me an explanation.
This is it.
I swear, this isn't clever marketing, it's the key to the movie's plot. He explains that he opened the puzzle box in an attempt to get the greatest pleasures imaginable. But it turns out the Cenobites' idea of fun involved a lot of cutting, hanging, bleeding, and generally unpleasant things. Which in the book was exactly what he was after, just not to that level. The Cenobites are at the point where they cannot distinguish pain from pleasure. He figured out a little too late that he was going to be tortured forever. Whoops. But now that he's free, they can run away and live together, You know, as soon as he gets an epidermis, of course. So, when her unloved husband hears a weird noise upstairs and goes to investigate.
Don't.
It's okay.
Please, not yet, Larry. We're only at the 50-minute mark. The climax can wait, can't it? Apparently not, as after him figuring the noise was probably a rat, they head for the bedroom instead. Ah, this is a pretty awkward time to come out of the closet. Strangely enough, though, he does not murder his brother, instead slicing a rat open. Maybe he's just trying to spoil the mood?
I don't understand you. Hey, one minute you're all over me, and the next...
I'm more interested in what the fuck is going on with you. Did you not hear or smell that just now? Her odd behavior is enough to get him to tell his daughter to see about making friends with her stepmother. After all, helping her father with his sex life is just how she planned to spend her weekend anyway. And there is no way to say that does not sound worse than I actually intended. However, when she comes by, it's just in time to witness Julia bringing another man into the house. Which means she must think that things are going much better than they actually are.
Hammer time!
Christy doesn't just run off and tell Dad the bad news, though. Instead, she walks in to slowly investigate, allowing her to learn the much, much worse news.
Kirsty, it's Frank. It's Uncle Frank.
No.
You remember?
No.
Come to Daddy.
Oh, you remember me, don't you, girl? The creepy uncle who is a sexual deviant and really into S&M? Arguably, I'm better now. Except, of course, it looks like the last feeding did jack shit to improve his condition, and it looks like he set his eyes on her blood.
Some things have to be endured. And that's what makes the pleasure so sweet.
On that note, Betty's not so happy that he's got a working nervous system now. Christy just so happens to nab the puzzle box, and learning that it's somehow important to Frank, steals it, running until collapsing of exhaustion. This leads to her waking up in a back room somewhere, as renting out an actual hospital appears to have been outside this movie's budget. The hospital staff also leave quite a bit to be desired, as instead of checking her vitals, they question what she was doing and what this mysterious box she had has to do with anything. But how the hell is this even an issue?
The police will want to speak to you, you know that. In the meantime, maybe this will jog your memory.
If the police are necessary and there is a crime, then that may be evidence, then you do not fucking leave it with the suspect! Not sure how hard this so-called puzzle is supposed to be, but it takes her all of 30 seconds to solve it, resulting in quite literally opening a door to another dimension. Here she finds... whatever the fuck that's supposed to be. Not important quite yet, as she escapes it without much difficulty, but her ordeal isn't over, as she is introduced to the rest of the Cenobites, such as the iconic Pinhead, played by Doug Bradley. Though I should point out, Clive Barker didn't name him Pinhead. The fans did. Clive didn't really care much for that name. Also, there wasn't really a head Cenobite originally, it's just two of the Cenobites' makeup really made it hard for them to say their lines, so instead, most of what they were supposed to say ended up going to him.
You solved the box. We came. Now you must come with us. Taste our pleasures.
Our world is the source of what you may call dipping dots. Christy isn't anxious to go with, so she mentions that her Uncle Frank escaped their clutches. Proving just how shit they are at keeping track of things, they don't believe her, but do allow her the chance to prove it. In the meantime, though, Julia realizes that since she already killed 3 men and doesn't give a fuck about Larry, well... I think they're trying to leave it ambiguous as to what happened, but no, just because we didn't see it doesn't mean it's not fucking obvious. So, now it's time to escape into the or fuck. Could do that. Which brings us to the topic of the title of this movie. Allegedly, Clive was having a difficult time coming up with one that the studio would like, so he put the question to the crew. And legend has it, a 65-year-old woman came up with what a woman will do for a good fuck. Not sure if that's true, but sure is fun to say. Must have been damn good too, as they don't leave immediately, but stick around long enough for Kirsty to show up and demand to see her father. Which she does, and despite how seriously fucked up he looks, especially around the hairline and ears, she doesn't catch the hint that maybe this isn't her dad.
Do you hurt your baby?
No, I'm okay.
He's better off dead. Poor Frank.
Never mind, he's acting really weird and has a whole bunch of blood around the seams. He says he's Larry and Frank's dead, so it's good enough, right? Apparently not, as Kirsty demands to see Frank's corpse. So they show her a corpse that looks to be in worse condition than Frank was in, and this somehow triggers another supernatural encounter, merely to show the audience that Kirsty is really, really dense.
We want the man who did this.
He's my father, and you can't have him! No!
Really? I don't think I'm spoiling anything here. Kirsty seems to be the only one who doesn't get it. Because in a shocking revelation...
Come to Daddy.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's actually Frank wearing Larry's skin! It seems like a weird parallel on what it's like to wear a lambskin condom. Meaning Act 3 is officially underway. It starts off with a bang as Frank accidentally stabs Julia instead of Kirsty, but he's not one to leave something unfinished and kills the fuck out of her just the same.
It's nothing personal, babe.
But everything I read about this movie described that killing as accidental. People have a really weird definition of accidents. Like a good horror victim, she runs upstairs to hide, but as it turns out, her strategy of stand around in the middle of the most used hallway in the building crying isn't the most stealthful approach she could have taken, which leads to a standoff between her and Frank in the room with her daddy's corpse.
Everything's all right. Frank's here. Bastard! Your dear old Uncle Frank.
Probably one of the most out-of-place times to give such an odd, reassuring statement, but then again, if he didn't, then this wouldn't happen.
Frank.
No. We had to hear it from your own lips.
If you want to get technical, those aren't his lips, but I get what you mean. The Cenobites recapture Frank so they can torture him forever. Again. But aren't quite done with Kirsty, or her stepmother, whom evidently solved the puzzle box after she died.
We have such sights to show you.
Terrifying vistas, like the Starbucks, across the street from the Starbucks.
No, don't do that.
And her fiddling with the puzzle box even further will banish the Cenobites, which is somehow necessary. And as far as I could tell in the original book, they weren't nearly as forceful with their intentions. But, again, that's not how a good horror movie climax should be, now should it? So instead, we watch her use the power of the box to defeat the Cenobites, with pretty damn crap special effects. Or as Barker says, for the work of two drunk guys over a weekend, it looks pretty damn good. So, happy ending! Kirsty survives the night, along with her boyfriend, Steve. Oh, yeah, Steve, played by Robert Hines. Pretty damn minor character. Was in a few other scenes, but, I mean, I could have just not even mentioned him now, and... different. But wait! When Kirsty decides to burn the puzzle box, homeless Hagrid shows up and transforms into the burning bum in order to retrieve it. And then... showing us all that even miscellaneous bum that has no bearing on the overall plot was more important than Steve. Hellraiser is a very interesting beast. It's not a movie you would call huge or epic, but it leaves an impression. Its ideas aren't things that we haven't seen before in one form or another, but the execution is top-notch. The familiarity of the story isn't so much a bad thing when you get down to it. It's familiar because it draws on common threads, and many of the motivations underlying it are relatable. The wife having an affair with a dangerous man who excites her far more than her boring husband has been done plenty of times. The dangerous man becoming a ghoul that demands sacrifice, not quite as often. Where I feel the approach didn't quite work was with Kirsty and her boyfriend. She's easy to pick out early on as the survivor of the horror movie, and Steve is... just there. I was half expecting him to die because, well, what else was he there for? The motivations of Frank and the Cenobites also make a bit more sense after doing a little research into the origins of the story. When you understand that Frank is into S&M and was expecting the Cenobites to be beautiful women, his seeking out and solving the puzzle box doesn't seem so random. Here they do come off more like they're dancing to the horror movie plotline than reasonable logic, but it's not nearly as bad as in some films. Overall, Hellraiser is a classic, and it's pretty easy to see why. It's not that it's a fantastic tale unlike we've seen before, or that it's got great characters. It's simply a really well done take on a familiar tale, with a mix of its own unique horror twists, coming in at 4 hooks in the flesh out of 5. Not super amazing, life-changing, oh my god, but pretty damn good. Thank you all for watching, I've been Shado, and remember, this movie spawned a ton of sequels. Far more than I could even cover. Unless, of course, this just so happens to be...
The Summer of Hellraiser!
Hey everyone, Shado here, and I'm sure you're wondering where that credits music was. Well, Iota put a little strike immediately, and then spent an hour and a half on that whole remove claim song processing thing, and wouldn't you know it, it failed and won't let me try again. Yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for taking so long to make me have to reprocess and re-upload this. Anyway, yeah, I'm starting to wonder if I should have my own credits music, because I seem to be running into a lot of trouble on YouTube, mainly at this spot, which is really annoying because it's almost completely unnecessary, and I just don't have my own credits music. That's kind of the reason why I did the thing I did last week with the Alien Resurrection review. I like them personalized, but at the same time I can't do that for every single one. It would be nice to have my own end credits theme, but, well, I guess that's all the time I have to rant today. In the meantime, fuck Iota again.
She's uptight and frigid.
I beg your pardon.
Ah, see, there you go. I beg your pardon.